ahead and get started? Just because I have something else that is relatively fast after this. So thank you, Mick, for being at CCS and signing checks for me. I appreciate that. So I will call the CCS Executive Committee meeting to order Wednesday, May 11th, 2022 at 10 a.m. Beth, can you call the roll, please?
Come back to see the joints. Jacobson.
Here.
Leffler.
Here.
McNulty.
Here.
Murray.
Here.
Shepard.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
And guests. See.
Jeannie Dilger from Palatine Library.
Thank you. And for CCS, we have Rebecca Malinowski, Beth Stonebrenner, and Deborah Wishmeyer.
Yeah, and Anthony is with us now too.
Present. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any additions to the agenda? I am assuming everyone saw the follow-up email from Beth yesterday correcting just the agenda, not the documentation that we got regarding for the consent agenda. So any other additions? No? Any public comment? No? Okay. So the consent agenda, which includes the approval of the minutes from April meeting and the financials for April and the approval of bills for April.
Actually, the meeting minutes are March.
Oh, the meeting minutes are correct. Sorry, my mistake.
So
I've got both agendas open up. So the financials and the bill payments are for April, not March. Mm-hmm. And then the approval of the employee handbook, the update in the description, it should not have said half-day increments. It's the change to the policy that would change the taking of time off to hourly increments. So those are the only changes in the consent agenda. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
This is Brian, so moved. Nick, second.
Thank you. Beth?
Austin?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Leffler?
Yes.
Sorry, thank you. McNulty?
Yes.
Murray?
Yes.
Shepard?
Yes.
And Smith?
Yes.
Okay, moving on, we have a recommendation from Budget and Finance Committee to move to Wintrust Bank. There is explanation on that on pages 18 and 19 of your packets. Mick and/or Rebecca, is there anything you want to add to the explanation that you and the presentation from Wintrust before we vote on that?
Go ahead, Rebecca.
Yeah, I'll just note, we took it to Budget and Finance, and per our fiscal accountability policy, it has to be, any depository has to be approved by executive committee. So that is why it is here. It's a combination of issues. Like, we won't see an immediate savings necessarily with Wintrust, although their cashback option on their credit card would be a new savings for us. But we've been experiencing sort of ongoing just service issues with Inland. As I described it to Beth and maybe Budget and Finance, I just don't feel like I should have to talk about the bank every week. So we're looking for a little bit of a smoother service, although we do understand there will be some effort in the transition. Beth did lay out a plan for transition, and we've been talking with the folks at Wintrust about how to make this as smooth as possible. So the resolution in your packet has been reviewed by the bank, so that has everything they need. And in sort of an unusual move, we have Pam as president on here, as well as Heidi as president-elect and not the treasurer, just because we're changing. Like, we're not really going to start using Wintrust until July, but we need to get the account set up now. So this way, both Pam and Heidi would be authorized users at this time as we kind of go through the transition. And then in July, we'd get Lauren as the new treasurer and remove Pam. So that is the explanation for the sort of unusual combination of folks on that list.
Mick, do you want to add anything, or does anyone have any questions?
Beth and Rebecca did a lot of research and looked at a lot of different libraries. And I know Anthony and Jeannie are also on the treasurer, the finance committee. And so we got to review all this, and I feel very strongly that they did the work really well, and I appreciate it.
It's interesting. We're actually we've had presentations from Wintrust. We are also unhappy with our current bank, and Wintrust is probably who we will go with as well at Morton Grove. So it's good to see that some of the work that you guys have done in addition to what we've done as well. So, okay.
I was going to say, as a Wintrust customer, I rarely, if ever, have to talk about the bank, Rebecca. So I never talk about them. So, I mean, they actually, pay the bills, or they, money moves and everything works the way it's supposed to. So.
Okay. Since we have a recommendation from Budget and Finance, I believe we can just vote.
We don't need a second, right? Or we can just vote. Okay.
We need a motion, but we wouldn't.
But we don't need a second. So do I have a motion to adopt the resolution to authorize Northbrook Bank and Trust Company, known as the bank depository, as presented?
I so move.
Right. And since we have a recommendation, we do not need a second. So Beth, can you call the roll?
Austin?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Loeffler?
Yes.
McNulty?
Yes.
Murray?
Yes.
Shepherd?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Okay. Rebecca, whenever you need me to come and sign for that, I can do that. I just couldn't be there today. So you just let me know and I can swing by and do that.
Yeah, I think that I'm just going to send it for electronic signatures, unless the bank has a panic. And then when we do like the July paperwork, we'll bring that around to do wet signatures.
Yeah, I didn't know if they needed a actual ink or if electronic would be fine. Great.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to potential members. Rebecca, do you want to add anything to your discussion of that?
I'll just add we had a couple of follow-up emails with one of their ILS task force members, and it seemed like some of her concerns were put to rest. And I just also want to shout out my team, because I love to shout out how great they are. The ILS committee at Warren Newport noted that they had reached out to some existing CCS members and specifically noted that the team at Grayslake couldn't say enough about the training that they got for circulation. And that really made them feel confident about membership. So the Warren Newport board is discussing this month. So I have on my list to snoop their meeting recordings. I'm available if they'd like me to attend, but Ryan has indicated that he doesn't think the board needs any convincing. It's really just staff. So I'm not planning to attend those meetings unless requested. If there's any questions, or again, about the presentation we shared with them, it was just for your information. I'm happy to answer them.
Do you feel like their staff concerns have been addressed by, I know that we've responded to a few things as well. And I mean, do you feel like you're getting the staff, that they're getting the staff buy-in that I know was a concern for them?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's sort of two components. One is just the circulation workflow. It's not that they don't want to do it. They're just, as you very well know, Pam, it's like, what are we going to do with all the bins? How many bins are there going to be? And we do have some pretty solid data now from the delivery fine count. And of course, your all experiences that your staff have been so willing to share. So I think that has helped. And I think CIRC is on board. With tech services, I think, as always, there's concerns about cataloging autonomy and being able to like add their own stuff to records. We particularly discussed Spanish language subject headings, which we do also use at CCS. And we said that we would, so when we bring in a new member, their items are attached to our bibs wherever there's a match. So there's always concern, and I think this was a concern at Indian Trails as well, that like their work from their bib records is going to be lost because it's just getting attached to their items are just getting attached to our bibs. So we did say that as part of our load process, we'd look at their Spanish language headings and see if there's a way, not necessarily that we could retain them during the migration, but that we could add them back in where they've already identified a need for them if our records didn't already have them. And and that seemed like the tech services manager there seemed on board. I do believe that there is a staff member in tech who was perhaps around 20 years ago when they were CCS members. But we have not, she's not on the committee and we haven't spoken with her to directly address her concerns. But I do think the folks who were on the call felt pretty confident. So I anticipate hearing from the board either in May or June, depending on if they want to discuss and then vote at the next meeting or discuss and vote together.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments regarding potential members before we move on? No. Innovative updates.
I will say that it does seem like development is moving forward with Vega, which has been our primary concern. They did schedule the consortia working group meeting and are they meeting again this month? Is that on the calendar yet, Deborah? I should have checked that.
I think it is on the calendar for next Thursday.
Perfect. They have made some changes. They keep changing the name of products, which is fine. So Vega LX Starter used to be called Vega Connect, but essentially it's, as Vega Connect more appropriately like sums up, it's the piece that connects your existing ILS to Vega. And so they've packaged with that some new notice options, like the new email notices are going to be a little bit snazzier than existing notices, as well as an updated online registration and library card renewal. So even if CCS chooses not to adopt Vega, as an existing Polaris customer, we would get those new notices and online registration as part of LX Starter, which, you know, I'm sure they're like, oh, get a little taste and then you'll want more. But that's good to know that the work that, you know, we've been putting into kind of consulting on these tools will still be available to us, even if we don't move forward with Discover. And the upgrade happened overnight, and Miyoko's in communication with the list. It doesn't seem like there were any issues. And she kind of specifically followed up with Innovative on things that had kind of been dropped in the past with upgrades. So thanks to the team's sort of awareness and documentation and Miyoko's follow-up, avoided some potential issues before they happened. So shout out to Miyoko. And then I'm happy to take questions on any of the Innovative stuff.
Does anyone have any questions for Rebecca regarding that? I think we're all just anxiously awaiting to see what happens.
Same.
Yes, I'm sure. Okay. 1 second. Okay. Sorry, I was reading over the agenda. So we do have to make some determinations with closed session minutes and recordings. As Rebecca pointed out in her email when she originally sent the documents for today's meeting last week, it doesn't look like we would necessarily need to go into executive session to do that, or closed session, if everyone is comfortable with approving or making those motions and taking those votes in open session. I know that I am. Is everyone okay with that? Okay. Okay, then if that is the case, then I'm finding the motions. Here we go. So the first motion would be to approve and release the minutes of the November 10th, 2021 and December 8th, 2021 meetings. One of those is for the semi-annual review of closed session minutes, and the other one is Rebecca's review. So do I have a motion to approve and release the minutes of November 10th, 2021 and December 8th, 2021?
This is Brian, so moved.
Thank you.
A second.
Who is that?
Sarah, second.
Sarah, great. Beth, can you call the roll, please?
Austin,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Leffler,
Yes.
McNulty,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Shepherd,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Okay. Closed session recordings to review. Minutes for these recordings have been written and approved and are already released. So we'll just be voting to destroy those verbatim recordings. So do I have a motion to destroy the verbatim recordings of the closed session meeting from November 11th, 2020?
So moved, Smith.
And a second?
Second. McNulty.
Great, thank you. Beth, can you call the roll?
Austin,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Leffler,
Yes.
McNulty,
Yes.
Murray.
Yes.
Shepherd,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Great. That was easy, much easier than going into closed session via Zoom. Moving on to reports. President's report, I have no report. Secretary?
No report.
Treasurer Mick?
No report.
Great. Committees and groups. Rebecca, is there anything you want to add to the written?
Only if there's questions. I'm happy to take them.
And then executive director. And I did realize that I skipped over the meeting transparency.
Yeah, so
agenda item. So maybe Rebecca, if you want to talk about that in your executive director report as well, that might be good.
Sure. So at our last meeting, our last executive committee meeting, we talked about meetings moving forward, and that we'd want governing board to resume in-person meetings, but that due to the brevity of committee meetings and the complexity of everyone's schedules and our ability to remain transparent, we'd like to keep committee meetings virtual, including executive committee moving forward. And it was suggested, I believe, by Heidi Smith, that I draft some transparency practices that we'll kind of commit to following. So I have drafted them. They're in your packet. I'm happy to take feedback and make changes. This is what I got so far.
Great. Thank you so much for doing it. Makes me feel very powerful that I can request things and they happen. Wow. I had two thoughts reviewing this. One was under governing board, the third paragraph, where it talks about, according to relevant statutes. And, I understand what you mean, and I appreciate that we would be following those practices. I wonder if some clarification about our approach to that, we're not, tell me if I'm getting it wrong. We're not following it because legally we have to, but we're following it because it's a best practice and we think it's a good thing. I felt like when you said relevant statutes, it felt like they were applicable to us. And I feel like we're trying to get away from that, So, and then the other thought I had was, maybe it's gilding the lily, but including something about the minutes then as well. To say something along the lines of, maybe you don't want to say this, but we don't have to follow OMA, but we're going to do this within 48 hours or whatever for the minutes. Those were my two thoughts. I thought it was very well done. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I can absolutely add our practices about the minutes and the agenda. I think in governance committees, I specifically say we'll post the agenda 48 hours before, but I don't for governing board. So I'll add that. And yeah, so for verbatim recordings, we record all governing board meetings regardless, and we're only required to record closed session meetings. Well, I guess we're not required. The OMA only calls for recording closed session meetings or meetings held remotely. But for our internal purposes and like Beth doing minutes, we do record all of them. But we only store the closed session and remote according to our document or our retention policy. So I guess I'm interested in your feedback on that. I mean, should I even mention that we record all meetings or just that we record any remote or closed session meeting?
That's tricky because we started doing that. Our city said, hey, this hybrid thing is super cool. Let's do it forever. And so I have that on my to-do list to figure out, you know, like, how long do we need to retain recordings of our regular meetings? There's, you know, I
believe you're supposed to keep the recording until the written out minutes are signed, approved.
Okay.
And that's what we've been following all along. And that's regardless of Zoom. Zoom we keep longer, but
yeah.
That's what we were doing with in-person meetings that we were recording. We were deleting the recording after the minutes were approved. But for as long as we've been on Zoom, we've just been keeping them.
Okay, so I'll say recording at least until minutes are approved. Or for closed session, I'll make a note about closed session or hybrid or remote meeting. I'll work on that and bring it back next meeting.
Thank you so much. Because I feel like the spirit of the thing is to say clearly, based on legal whatever, you know, OMA doesn't directly apply to us, but here are the practices in the spirit of things that we're going to follow or do.
Yes.
Thank you.
and just an aside, we weren't using Zoom to record our Zoom meetings. We were still using our recorder. So we were practicing as we did as when we were in person.
Interesting.
We're keeping our recordings of our Zoom meetings, but we're only keeping the audio files. We're not keeping the video files.
Also interesting.
We've been recording all of our meetings for several years now. We put them on our YouTube channel, so they're up there forever. Or at least until, yeah, we started doing that when we had lots of contention on our board and stuff. So, but we just have kept doing that, so. Great. Any other questions or comments regarding the transparency practices document that Rebecca will tweak and then get back or send back to us for next month? No? Okay.
Thank you for your feedback on that. I do think I was like, oh, Heidi said I have to do it. I think it's a great idea and I was happy to do it. Any other questions about my report or anything, CCS stuff?
I don't have any. No? Great. This is one of those reasons that it's nice to be able to attend this virtually since we will officially adjourn the meeting then at 10:23 a.m.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks again, Mick.